In today's video we're going to be using this mini PC as an, let's say, emulation machine, and we can do so many cool things when it comes to Windows. However, we have in here the power supply. This is just a 12-volt power supply with an USB-C connector. So to give you an idea, this thing is 3000 milliamp. So then having the manual. And take note there are different versions out there when it comes to this mini PC. We have like the 5000 series Intel, but also the N100. But the N100 is going to be way more expensive. And then we're having the HDMI cable, only one of them. And after a couple of times I managed to get this thing to boot up. So one of the things I also do sometimes, if you don't want to use Windows at all, just disable it or remove the SD card. Loading can take a little bit of time simply because of the different sizes of hard drives and what kind of stuff you actually added to them. And you can just see when booting up, and will showcase all of the different systems that have been set up at this point. And I'm going to be doing a quick overview, particularly when it comes to, let's say, the higher end stuff, because that's going to be interesting, trying to see if we can upscale it. The device has been booted up, and let's go into the settings and showcase what you can actually see and do over here. So with information, I'm going to be giving you a quick overview of the specs of the device. So let's do a little bit of a nerdy mode when it comes to, let's say, the mini PC we're using. So the downside to these tiny compact devices, like 60 Celsius already, and I'm not going to be doing anything at this point. So when it comes to the video memory, we're having 8 GB, a single channel. So I have an OpenGL 4.6, and we have the Intel Celeron N5105 running on 2 GHz. That has actually a CPU number of 4. And yeah, the max frequency is 6900 MHz and OpenGL ES 2.0. So having the Ultra HD graphics from Intel. So when it comes to specs, this is not like a fancy, like super fancy device. But when it comes to this, I just wanted to see what we can, how far we can push it and what can we actually play with this. Because when it comes to these mini PCs, even the old ones and this chip, we do have some overall nice performance, and particularly when it comes to upscaling. So let's start off with some 3DO, and the reason why is because this is a system that doesn't run on the game sticks. Even if it's on the game stick or a game box, we do have a lot of problems with this. And with such a cheap mini PC, you can just actually see that we can enjoy ourselves some Return Fire and some other classics, and that's absolutely awesome if you ask me. We have like a minor stutter over there, but nothing very awful. 50 frames per second, only had explosions, kind of weird. But it goes back all the way to, let's say, the normal 60 frames per second. So yeah, when it comes to playing this game, this is going to be absolutely a lot of fun. I love Return Fire, by the way. And now with the mini PC and Batocera, we do have the option to actually play this. It's amazing. Mamma mia. Yes. Get to the chopper. Get to it now. Woohoo. Is everything mapped up? Yep, everything is mapped. Hahaha. But let's get into something more of a challenge with Atomic Wave. So when it comes to this particular game, you do have a lot of problems with those cheaper game boxes. And did notice that when it comes to some of these images, you need to set up the BIOS or other stuff. If you don't do this properly, you will have a little minor hiccups. But going through the game, you can just actually see we have no problem whatsoever. This runs so much better than like a $39, let's say, game stick or whatsoever. So if we just want to enjoy some Atomic Wave, that is even possible now. I just wanted to see how far we can push on Sega Dreamcast with the Dead Alive 2 test. And you can see with 720p, it's going to be pushing this thing to the limit. I did some, let's say, frame drops, notice it in the beginning, but now it's having quite a stable 60 FPS. So when it comes to, let's say, this tiny mini PC where this chip is already a little bit older, you can see that we can still push it to quite a nice, let's say, overall resolution. And if you do have struggles with some of the games, you can always put it to a different resolution itself. So I find it quite fascinating. There we have like a massive dip because I needed to load up a little bit of information for the next character to appear. But beside that, I think it's a lot of fun to actually see how far we can push it when it comes to Sega Dreamcast. I'm also using the Flycast emulator, not Redream, by the way. But if you want to know how to set it all up, you need to hold the A button in this case. We're going to be going to the advanced game options at the right. Here we can find all kinds of different, let's say, emulators. We're using Libretto Flycast at the moment. Going all the way down, Here we're going to be finding the option for rendering resolution, where you can see it's 720p. I've been messing around with it, putting it all the way to the Full HD resolution, but that was way too much. There are different ways to actually go to, different ways to actually set it all up. You can also tweak with every single game to see how far you can push it. But with Game Boy Advance we do have so many different ways that we can actually play. So this is absolutely a very awesome way, because we do have like better aspect ratio now. Of course, if you're going to be playing this on a 60-inch screen or some kind with some bezels, it's not going to be looking any better. However, I think it's kind of cool. We can tweak, we can put all kinds of different retro filters on it if you want to have like an overall better gaming experience. But this is just normal resolution, stretched, and of course bezel implemented. And for 8-bit, 16-bit and so many different handhelds, this device is just more than enough. But do you need to spend so much money on, let's say, mini PC for that? That is all the way, and the question you should ask yourself. But how about emulation of the Dolphin? And of course the GameCube. And when it comes to this, yeah, we're going to be pushing it to the limit. I think this is one more of the appealing things when it comes to a mini PC, where you can have so many awesome options. But getting into the game, you will notice some dips to the 50 frames per second, but it's just native resolution, and it seems to be working just fine on the normal Dolphin emulator. I've chosen this, by the way, this character, and I have no idea how to actually play with this guy. But out of the box, this is kind of cool when you're looking at it, what you can actually do. You can always like mess around with upscaling, but I showed you before, if you're having like less demanding, for example, non-3D games, like two-dimensional games, maybe you can do a little bit of upscaling here, but out of box, like, it seems to be working with Dolphin. But with MAME games, we can actually play even more than before. So where there is not a lot of upscaling going on in here, with native resolution, so if you just want to play the old school MAME games, you have an old PC laying around, maybe you can try it and drive of Batocera on there. You don't really need a new PC for that, because these games run on cheap game box or game stick. What I do love about it is that we have the bezel implemented, so it looks so much better now. So one of the exciting things is that we can actually play some N64 without any problems whatsoever, or at least on native resolution. I think that is one of the cool things when it comes to a mini PC now. If you're going to be playing Cruising USA on a cheap game box or stick, it always have a lot of problems. So if you do see some glitches, you can always switch between different emulators to get an overall better result. But we do run on the normal speed like it should be, so that's just great. But another thing I wanted to do to see if you're going to be having a more demanding game, and maybe I try to do a little bit of an upscaling, because that is also possible with N64. I'm going to be playing that on upscaled. It looks so much better than the original native system. So where we know that it runs perfectly on native resolution, just wanted to see how far we can push it. Having now 720p enabled with some N64. The frames go all over the place, so that is one thing to be sure. So we're not running full speed, but it is playable. So another thing we can do is like doing a little bit of a lowering down when it comes to the overall upscaling and having overall better performance. But it's just fun to see how far we can push it when it comes to like a tiny device like this. And take note, there's no upgradability, and we're not even overclock it if you can do that, because this thing is getting already quite hot as it is. We're moving on to the PlayStation 1 emulation, and this time with the dock station we're going to be putting it in 1080p upscaling resolution. And I've been playing a lot of, let's say, testing out the PlayStation 1 on, let's say, game sticks and other just basic stuff. But looking at this now on 1080p rendering resolution, this looks really great. And that is what I love about this mini PC with Batocera, that we can upscale it and push it to the limit. And if you're going to be having more power, like a powerful i5 or an i7, you can maybe try 4K and having even more fun with these older games. And I'm just flabbergasted how good it's actually going to be looking now. But let's get into some PlayStation 2 emulation. It's going to be on native, not like with the PlayStation 1 that we're going to be having 1080p. I would not really recommend doing that, with a simple reason, because some of the games are more demanding than Tekken, but I just wanted to showcase a game that is actually playable. And having such a, let's say, low power chip, that we do have the option to play PlayStation 2 emulation. And of course, if you're going to be spending a little bit more money or searching for an older mini PC with an i5 or i7 in it, you maybe have the option to do a little bit of an upscaling. But beside that, it's kind of cool that we do have the option for playing some PlayStation 2 with a minor hiccup. PlayStation Portable with 4K rendering resolution with a basic PlayStation Mini. I just wanted to see what happens, and you can see that it doesn't have any struggle so far I can see. But this is a mini game, so it's just a basic two-dimensional game. I already mentioned before, with other systems like PlayStation 2, the GameCube, you can mess with, let's say, two-dimensional games. They're less demanding, and you can always do a little bit of scaling. But let's see what happens if you're going to be using a normal game with the PlayStation Portable emulator and 4K. So let's move on to a three-dimensional game, fighting game like Soul Calibur. And let's get into the game, doing quick tense bench to see what happens if we're going to be putting this on 4K rendering resolution. And so far I will dip down a little bit with some parts of the game, but not to the point it's going to be quite annoying. So far so good. So I'm fascinated to see how far we can push this crazy tiny mini PC with PlayStation Portable Emulation.